Okay, welcome, Camilla.
Yay!
Welcome, Camilla. Thank you to receive our invitation and be
Yeah.
with us in the middle of the second wave of the COVID 2020.
We're surfing the waves of the COVID.
Of COVID.
Upcoming.
No, thank you to accept our invitation and welcome to this Languages of Virus number 33 or 34. I don't know.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I was going to read so two things. One is a more straightforward, like poetry, sort of with some sound thing, which is part of a series called Run, and it was from running around where I live. It was the same route every month, once a month for like 6 months, and I had like certain rules, which were if I wasn't running, I had to be writing, and if I wasn't writing, I had to be running, and anything that came into my head had to go down, and it was I was trying to like engage all of my senses, really kind of keep my whole body like alive to what was happening around me. So I'm going to kind of come in the middle of a run and hopefully get to the end of it, but I might cut it short if I feel like it's running on too long. Sorry. I couldn't resist. Anyway, and then maybe we'll have a chat, and then I wanted to do another piece which has a video. So anyway, we see how it goes, see how everyone's feeling. Bonfire, peaty smell of burning grass gathering round the blackening base of straw, shaved right off with his head, and a beard as well. Well, he can keep the birding insistence, something winding between foreground and traffic monotone, this gathering bleak of grey, brown, cowless. The cows are all gone, that is the sadness. The land is silent without their hefty, swelling, stirring hooves, tongue muscles stomaching plant into animal again. I am bereft. I am alone on the horizon, the only beast to be seen for miles around, and all this grass to stretch my feet over uninterrupted. Sleep. The pylons are all empty now. Skyline, whiting, grey. I am not what I came for. Earthy, sinking. Underground, everything is underground. No more human hurrying home, till spring you are just yourself on a sod of turf, so lonely to be. You are just yourself, barbed wire resilient. Underground, earthling subsidence, subsistence, resistant to forces other than this, what this, buzzard or corvid or skylarking still, one only or two, or an arrowing flurry of something fluttering, weather forecast was right, a bushy gathering round my ankles, rootless, chained and sky thrown with light and chopping noise, some metal caught in air. Come back to me, earth grown, heartless, loveless, homesick for itself, calling, magnetic, come back to me, bone from my own, you are an adaming, sidelong view, I know not what, bird, whistle, buzzard, cloaking, moss-grown fence, I am still here, and will be again, gathering. Corvid resilience, muttering, car hum, and other muddy familiars. What is this parting of grasses, this bold patch of ground, this mud bare with scratching feet or finding nose, some burrowing thing, unsatisfied scraping, dog, pant, chirrup, harder to hear with a hat on your head, fence post collider, I am, a solid groan of muscle circumscribing bone, an arrowy rustling of sound now perpendicular, standing ready, gathered to a point, found, this is me, gathering, trained intensity of feet, nothing other than a gathering line run many times in many tempos. This wintering earth has little to distract me, hard to sink into this earth. Flinty stone grown chalk and chalk again, sky grown fat and fluffy with its grey, something humming and windy sort of almost out of pages and not done yet. No, 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 I am sorry for the lack of their black beastly presence and the freedom that comes with that. I am sorry for their absence and all this quieting space, grown cold and sinking into grass, and maybe some This is where the cow met me last time, some sort of string wire, groping out of ground, reaching electrical, rubber casing, black, fence post, brown with rain this side, not hard, clean green. I am the wrong side of things, it seems, but me all the same, so still at home, bird chirrup surrounds, wing float, black, bodying, substantial. I am many friends among trees. I am stones and earth, grown hurrying home into outhouses, barns, and other buildings. I am hibernation, undering, and all that seasonal gathering in, and further in, further sinking sin. I am snuggle, safe, and imaginary warm on this bleating hillside. Evenings grown pencil impatient, bird me cold fingers, fence post irrelevant, new song, glittering lights in gloom, nothing much to write of, safe and warm, and rain, and wild grown warm round me, polar harrowing inside, quick now, hide now, that's enough lounging on hillsides for one day, voice insistent, lung, larger than this, what fingers cold to the bone, words worrying sense, slurring impossible, rain, tick, multiple. All those many cloven hooves imprint impossible, impasse impossible. What is this brain dormancy, forget-me-not, forked tongue and razor wire turbulence? What is this sweat, death, and welcome, frozen hillside? I don't want to be frozen on this hillside. I want to be warm in my bed and leave this harrowed turf and dung to sink into its own sense of who, what, when, where, and whatever other maggoting dunghill it makes of itself. This is not my, well, maybe my, but not for the wintry mess of pages, gathering, and I am gathering, and my left back muscle aches, and lorry rush, wind from the north must be always the sound of car hum, terrific, unescaping, Petulant is another one. Salt ash cathedral, boned and bred for nothing, nothing. Grass and air and wiggling lines through the subtle earth. Flower, raggedy yellowing and purple frondy thing. Crows, bored croakings different from ravens. Whining mechanism runs through this windscape. Cars from the other direction, surroundscape, patchwork rebellion in the trees, in the wood, and over it, murky rooting, digestif, hum, hum, muttering. Earth saga burial, tractor lit up, a browning purple mud want, suck of flesh to unwashed bone. I am not yours, and you are not mine, mine for the aching earth want. Hold my hand, but careful, careful, not sure what that looks like yet. And all this running's made me realize the cow calendar only took 6 months or 7, same time as homecoming, almost Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please put a penny in the middle of the road and roll right over it. Somersault, you are a silly sort of messiness, but probably not terminally broken. Heart's ease, plant a sapling where the soft, strong blood grows cold, and let its roots grow random. Bind you to it. I don't know if I want you, but bind you to it after all that. But this was an earth summoning, a ballast weight thrown out to offset your own wandering. Let's leave it at that for now, for nonsense now, for the thread keeps spooling. We know that now. Tractor turns against the hedge. He's not there on the hill anymore, coordinates thrown. There is a graduating pedantry growing in my thinking string of, ooh, it's cold on this dung heap. Ooh, it's whistling beautiful to be wind. Ooh, I'm writing too much, but this is the last time with this ghostling silence, and I've been with you in it. Even if you haven't known it, I've been with you in it, I've been with you in it, I've been with you in it. There's something heroic about loving someone even when they're a dick. Trademark summoning, brick broken, red death, chalk stumbling, earth eating earth and everything else, back muscles ache and stone and gait and parceling resemblance, with will hold strong till spring. Goodbye for now, and take this earthing with you. I am not dead yet, and do not intend to be for some time, though my silence may suggest otherwise. This autumn wind is leafy generous and lecturing release. Let drop, the earth will let drop. Let each treading step press seeds into earth, and I will remake it. Trot your way home. I'm coming, I'm coming. The gate is closing now, and the fence posts grow restless with wondering what will come next. But this I don't know, this I don't know, and the echoing openness feels binder twine, signpost, cattle grid, path it downhill just for the joy of it, bird bleat and whistle, run. Road rush. Who cannot tell any of us? You cannot tell any of us. You cannot tell any of us what or how to think or feel. That is all gone. Anymore. They are all gone under the hill into the barn, home, treading heavy, bone-hung, flesh-sink selves, each their own mooing made, and all we are left with is the occasional bleating machine to run through this silence, rain, but there is no one to listen to pencil on paper, only this ear bent so close to the page it can hear its own handwriting, rhythm and outline, crows, animate, lights behind. Everything is darking, falling out of light. Road. We are all in cars these days with heaters on. Outside's hard to live with when the world's like that. But necessary breeding ground for earth and all its many all its many friends, grown enemies, grown family, grown friends. Light blinks off behind, and I am on my last page, a sorry note. I'm sad to leave this writing flight behind. grey gathering, colouring its bowels. Return it all in time. Promise, promise, write a return, come back to me broken and braying with nonsense again. I will, and marry me someone so grassy and sweet it will feel like a hillside all over again. I will, now. Earth song, tempestuous ground rattle, old man's beard, car pass, neglect, and again a surfacing thrum, a orange light reflection, birding, chaos, wet road, bit, whistling, tip, tip, tip. The roads are all empty now, rain, halogen, hard to read, the weather with your eyes, half shut, rain, creating weather, horizontal threading. Sage, I am old and willow withering. Orange everywhere and not a drop to drink, floating, watery, gate click, apple crush and stink.
Oh, bravo. Amazing. Everything's in silence. We listen. Everyone is... Open your mics.
Nice one.
Fantastic.
Great.
Yeah.
I was a little concerned you were going to hyperventilate or something.
It's my running, breathing.
An amazing crow impersonation, Camilla. It's uncannily good.
Yes, very good.
And the cow's not bad as well.
Yeah, they don't speak back to me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Entered into conversation.
Oh dear. Yeah. Woo, feel quite lightheaded now.
And the raven was fantastic.
No, thank you. So I don't know how this works. I can go straight on to the next one with the video, which is very different, or we can speak, or how does everybody feel?
Keep going.
Keep going? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. This is a piece called One Day This Glass Will Break, after Cornelia Parker. I don't know if anybody's seen that piece. It's two images. The first, so basically I'm going to share the first video that you see when I read the normal text out is Cornelia Parker's two images. And the first one is called A Spent Bulb Exposed by a Live One. And the second one is called A Premeditated Act of Violence. And when I saw them, they were on the wall next to each other. So I've done that's not how you're going to see them, but anyway, I hope you get kind of roughly an idea. So I'll read the poem with her images, and then I go into my own thing with my own thing. We'll speak afterwards. Okay, I'm sharing my screen, so. Okay. A spent bulb exposed by a live one. Globule test tube, dark drop, heavy, insider, white square, insider, black frame, hangs on a white wall. Filament caught in the act of mixing a solution. Bottles stop, tips, liquid shade, doesn't shift, everything remains the same, solid container, whole kept separate, tension strongholds the blank, safeguards the impossible, Interlude. Between frames. Self contains a bordered I am, you, and you are not me. We exist in a mutual tension of resistant unbecoming, refusal to. A premeditated act of violence, explosive shattering of time and space, profusion of elements connect a disjointed assembly, black, white, grey, disturb a logic resistant to codifying. The bulb becomes a painting of its fractured self, unfulfilled, on its way to remaining all the while whole. The page observes its undoing with some satisfaction, integrity undisturbed by sudden transformation. The smug imperviousness of the frame, puzzled fragments unstuck, knowing themselves to be singular for the first time since their liquid history. They have different histories now. The bravery of broken glass observes its failure in being broken. Defiance and collapse makes the whole bulb great. Past and present speak across the wall, dividing frame from frame. This is what it is to be broken. This is what it is to be whole. Each feels their strength as a deficiency. It is impossible to realize everything at once. One day this, one day this, one day this, one day this. Well, one day this glass will break. A spent bulb exposed by a live one. Globule test tube, dark drop heavy inside a white square, inside a black frame, hangs on a white wall. Filament caught in the act of mixing a solution, bottle stop tips, liquid shade, doesn't shift, everything remains the same, solid container, whole kept separate, tension strongholds the blank, safeguards the impossible. Self contains a bordered, I am, you and you are, not me. We exist in a mutual tension of resistant unbecoming, refusal to explosive shattering of time and space, profusion of elements connect a disjointed assembly, black, white, grey, disturb a logic, resistant to codifying. The bulb becomes a painting of its fractured self, unfulfilled, on its way to remaining all the while whole. The page observes its undoing with some satisfaction. Integrity undisturbed by sudden transformation, the smug imperviousness of the frame, puzzled fragments, unstuck, knowing themselves to be singular for the first time since their liquid history, they have different histories now. The bravery of broken glass observes its failure in being broken. Defiance and collapse makes the whole bulb great. Past and present speak across the wall, dividing frame from frame. This is what it is to be broken. This is what it is to be whole. Each feels their strength as a deficiency. It is impossible to realize everything at once. Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camilla.
No,
That
my
was
pleasure.
great.
Oh, thank you. I have no idea how the sound comes across in this because I have no microphone, so I was just,
Very good. It was very good.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
How you guys? Everyone, yeah. Wow, I'm in a kind of travel, freezing and burning from the inside, beside the, I don't know, the heliocentric sounds or waves. That which connection that you have, Camila? You connected with directly with animals, like a shamanic or medicine woman style, or a vocation of spirits? What is your method to be possessed like that and to transmit that kind of possession of poetry that I don't know, that I at least I feel from you?
In the first one, or
In the, in the first and in the last one, and I don't
in
know
the
if yeah, the last one also, that kind of connection with sound and objects in a way. I feel like you really like, uh, I don't know, make a round trip between the object and yourself and the poet, like a kind of messenger of the different position of the object. I don't know. I feel a kind of a possession, like a shamanic possession, and also like a kind of trance, like a radio transmitter, and also like a kind of receiving and giving, like I don't know, healing sounds and natures. I don't know. I really like. I don't understand still how that is. That I love the thing that I don't understand. But how you? My question is about your connection. What is your thinking in the sound, in the object, in what is your position in reception and emission of the poem?
I don't really know, to be honest. With the running, it was literally just. It was just literally like anything that came in. Like, I was very much, trying to keep my whole body as a sort of like listening organ. So like everything that came in just went onto the page. So I don't really know, but I do know that with movement, like, Scott, I think you'll probably feel that. I think when you're like moving words through movement, like your whole body comes alive in a way that I don't find my body is activated in the same way when I'm sitting at a desk or like with a notepad. So I feel everything more when I'm in that movement state, particularly with the running, and you've got all the elements around and the smells and the sights and the textures and I think what was sort of helpful for me was the sense of like, we're so used to thinking of ourselves as like these discrete selves, and I know we all know that like we are continually shifting and changing, but we still, I don't know, I still think of myself as a sort of single object. But I think when I was running through landscape, even though I am a sort of single entity running through everything, but it felt like through the language I was sort of able to register that experience of actually everything kind of coming into me. But I don't know whether that comes across, but that sense of actually like human experience is just a nexus for lots of different influences to like pass through and get jumbled up, like you're a sort of test tube in an experiment, like lots of different things are being poured in and moved through all the time. So that's how I kind of felt with the running one. And the light bulb one, you're right, like I really did. I saw these two light bulbs on the in front of me, and I was like, I feel a real connection to these light bulbs. These light bulbs are states of myself. And so yeah, it was like writing through the light bulb, or the light bulb was kind of rewriting me in a way. And then I wanted to kind of sonically try to do what with the poem I had obviously written it out, and then I pasted it over the light bulb, and then the fragments of the poem fell apart on the copier. So it was physically kind of coming apart, but I wanted it to sonically come apart as well. So, and again, I think when words sonically come apart, I think you hear different parts of your you know, human self, things that are weird and uncomfortable and odd, and you know, it's improvised as well. You know, I'm the sound is obviously around, one day this glass will break, but I don't know fully what sound is going to come out, so that, you know, committing to that sound, and sometimes you're like, oh my god, this is not a sound I want to be making. But you're just like, okay, just go with it, it'll transform. But yeah, trying to be, I don't know, I really admire the performers. I admire the most are people who are able to like capture that liveness, you know, they just are in that moment, like what comes out, and it's really, I find that really impressive. So you know, I'd like to get to that stage one day. But this is where I am for the moment.
Fantastic. Yeah, and do you sometimes you use some technology, or you always read like that, really brute, nature brute? Or
I'm really bad with technology. I mean, I have now a microphone because I've been doing like a recording for radio stuff, but my brain is doesn't feel like it naturally speaks to digital systems. So I would love to play around with things like loop pedals and all sorts of different mics and stuff, but my brain is frightened of them.
yeah, it could be lovely to make experience with it. Maybe come to visit us in Paris, and with Joaquin we'll organize a session, and we'll record you with some pedals, some effects and things.
Ah, that would be cool. I'd love that.
Oh, Joaquin, do you agree?
No problem. Of course.
Of course. Anyone have a question to?
Yeah, I have a little question, more a detail, but some of the things that we are always talking about is this idea of the poem as a score. So I'd like to know in these particular poems, sound poems, if there's a part of improvisation, or do you write some of the vocal gestures or noises or animal you know, shouts, etc.? How do you deal with that relationship between writing, memorizing, taking notes of what you'll perform, and the actual performance?
The sound stuff is always because I'm improvising around a certain phrase.
Yeah.
I will just, there is no notation other than I know that I'm working my way through a phrase sonically.
Yeah.
But with the
yeah.
I mean, that's just I just write it cork, CAW.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to know that kind of insight. Yeah.
And same with moo, like that's just moo written on the page.
Yeah.
But the running, I've actually I'll show you the running is, the breathing for the running is I haven't found the right like typeface for it properly yet, but I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Like
one long, two short, one long. So yeah. So I have to find the typographical equivalent for that. But
yeah, because that is something like all sound poets have to deal with. There's no like a notation, a specific notation for sound poetry. So like everyone has to invent his or her own. So. Martin, who likes big plans, maybe we should make like an international score notation, language, science, and all that for the sound poets.
Yeah. And then I try to forget just before to go to stage.
Exactly, that's the idea.
Right, for years, and just before, let it in the backstage.
Exactly.
Scott, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, it sort of really follows those threads through. I was curious about the relationship between notation and improvisation, but I suppose I was interested what you said about encountering different parts of self in the sound making. So is it possible to think of the sound making as a sort of mode of inquiry in its own right? And what is, you know, the nature of what you discover when you're there? Is that part of what you're hoping to do, is to find out something more about the score when you enter the performance, as it were,
I
or
think
to find something new?
on a really selfish level, I think with the sound stuff, it's more that I like find different parts of myself. I sound like a massive, terrible solipsist, but you know, it just always amazes me.
There's nothing wrong with solipsism. Is it?
But I think what I find really strange with sound, and I know, like, obviously we can provide like notations and kind of visual equivalents, but you know, the sound itself doesn't have a, you know, it isn't there physically, and I find it really strange when you are, because within myself I think I have a sort of visual, I'm sort of trying to visually map it, I think, when I'm making the sound, but it isn't, it's like, oh, this is very I'm going very into kind of a non-verbal territory here, so so it always, it's like it's dark, you know, it's like inside of myself it's dark, and then the sound moves in there, and it's like oh, that's what that texture is in that part of myself, or in that part of my voice. It like it makes it visible, or tangible is the word, like it makes parts of myself tangible to me. And so it's like weird, you know, it's like I don't know what's happening, but it's and then registering your own emotional reactions to it, because it feels, the emotional reactions feel so kind of culturally embedded, you know, like when I'm doing the, like, for example, anytime I go into anything that sounds like sex, I'm always like, oh my god, stop making the noise, and then I'm like, no, just, you know, I've got another part of me, it's like, just keep going, move through, it will go into something else. So it's encountering all of that weird stuff that is going on within yourself. So that's what is interesting to me. But that's probably not very helpful. I don't know whether that's...
No, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of what Martin was suggesting about shamanic practices, as I understand them, about they can be about retrieving different aspects of self. But also what you were saying about visualization has made me think about, I think there's been work done on how musicians work in improvisation, and the visualizing and using imagery is a quite well established technique or practice, at least. I mean, I know that's not quite what you were saying, because you're actually talking about texture in a way, but I know when I've improvised vocally, it tends to be images for me, and I can sort of see kind of sounds, and feel that I'm making marks in space through the voice. I mean, that's come from that work I did with Steve Boylan, who's really fascinating on these matters. But yeah, that intrigues me, though, that idea of discovering those different parts. That makes a lot of sense.
I think that's what sound, like, you know, like making sound out of your own body, I find that's what's so interesting to me, because it feels like the more work you do, like, it's just like an infinite potential of sound that can come, different textures that can come out of this body that we occupy all the time. And we use such a small spectrum of possible sound, you know, range, and but the time it takes to sink into different parts, to find them or activate them, like, that does take quite a lot of time, and I don't put in enough time, I don't think. But I would like to do more, and yeah, to kind of extend your range. Yeah, I don't know anybody else who like plays around with like vocal sonic stuff, who has any
Check out Phil Minton if you don't know him.
Oh yeah, no, I know him. I was thinking anybody here who had a
All the friends that Joachim, Georg, Felipe.
who had a sense of like what their experiences of making sound with their body.
Oh, these guys go crazy, man. They're all over the place with their sound shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, Islands worked with Phil Minton and Maggie Nichols as well. Is another amazing artist in that field. So, the Trimble must have something on this.
Where is Trimble?
He's down.
Trimble,
His megaphone.
Trimble's voice is
Camera's on.
yeah.
Turn your camera on, Trimble.
He's trembling somewhere.
I'm trembling here. Only partly functioning in North Wales.
As well.
Yeah, I tend to use objects a bit. I don't know why that is, but yeah. I'm using objects at the moment, so it's difficult to say about the body. I was trying to learn how to growl, like, you know, metal music.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, yeah. It's quite granular part of your body that you have to get to. Yeah, exactly that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, roaring. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Throat singing is good for that if you can get it.
Oh my goodness. I've tried to learn to throat sing. Hang on, let me see if I can do a bit of.
Right.
Oh no, I can't. No, I have to do a bit of practicing. But it's amazing. I love it.
I had another question there, because it's really interesting. I mean, what you're saying about this, sort of spectrum of sound and so I suppose one thing you can think of is that starts breaking signification. But then you're also, with what you're doing, you sort of you move into these sort of animal noises, and so actually in the first piece I was thinking you're making this sort of breathing sound and going into the cows and the crows and so these different sorts of embodiment, but they seem to be, or you're talking about them really on a continuum. And so it's not like a kind of breaking of meaning, but something, very sort of fluid and flexible. And I just thought that was interesting, because often, I don't know, and a lot of the conversations that we've had here have been about a sort of, a breaking of sense. Or meaning, and this is
I think with the running and walking ones, I really I did a series of walks, and there I do a lot of singing in them, just because that's a song, a song would just come into my mind, and so that's what is part of that, and then you have like other animals or whatever I'm hearing. So again, I think probably because it feels like human. I mean, even though the human language is only happening in my head when I'm in that landscape, it's just, I think that you're absolutely right, Zoe, that the sound that humans make is just on a continuum with all of the sounds that are being made by everything else around me or around any of us, rather than trying to kind of, like the terrible history of like the human word and human speech as being this amazing thing that no other organisms have the capacity for, and that's certainly not how I think of it. I think of it as just more like, we just understand what each other is doing with our noises, whereas we don't necessarily understand or can't fully decode what's happening with other things.
But also the mimicking of bird call. I mean, that's what they're It's entering into their pattern of communication as well.
Yeah, and like the birds that take on, you know, human noises into their term for it. But yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting that movement of sounds between species, and well, with birds you see it more than others. But
I think throat singing is also interested in imitating the sounds of nature as well.
Yeah.
Also interesting, I mean, sort of following on from what Zoe said, this sort of more of a continuum rather than a break. You're going for a run, which has its own sounds continually, right? Whether it's your footstep or some animal that comes in, you're breathing. And then you're doing a poem, which is in a sense like a run. It's a, you know, a continuous thing, and it's got its own footfalls and things coming into it and whatever. And I'll just say the obvious. I just enjoyed that sort of parallelism, I guess.
I also recently been in this fantastic reading by Jennifer Scapitone, who's here now, that worked with Canary and the sound of birds there. It was fantastic, going back and forth in history and then the sound of the bird. And
wow.
Well, that's amazing. Just to interrupt to tell people if they haven't seen this, actually, I only heard a few seconds of this thing that was in the Barbican some years ago, where they had electric guitars sort of perched up, and they had a bunch of zebra finches, I think, who were allowed to kind of go on these live electric guitars. Now, my sister saw this, and I didn't want to wait in a very long line, and I regret it to this day, because apparently it was utterly blow away. You had the birds doing their sound, as well as jumping around and standing on the strings of these electric guitars. And apparently it was utterly astonishing. I don't know if there's a recording of it. I only saw once 10 seconds or 20 seconds of it.
That sounds amazing.
I actually, I wanted to ask about some of this. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer. Thank you for inviting me in. I'm sorry I was late. I had a good reason, but I was really interested in sort of the tension between your idea that you were excavating different parts of yourself, and then the idea that we as selves are these sort of interfaces, nothing but some kind of porous membrane. I'm not sure what to call it, but in any case, that there was, as people are pointing out, there's such a continuum between the animal and the objectual and the human in that piece of yours. And so I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that, like the idea. It seems like it can't be solipsism because there was such an alterity to the sounds, and they seem to be in tension between being learned from the natural environment and then being something kind of other to it. So I just sort of wanted to remark on that tension, and I wondered if you had thought about that much, like what is self, like if we're excavating different parts of ourself, but where do those come from, or what do they reflect from the outside?
I mean, again, like the running process was probably I don't know, it was just really, really interesting for me. And I swear it sounds really boring to explain something that I've only gone through myself, but because of that sense of, it was just, I don't think I'd ever really, the combination of trying to write down or trying to kind of capture like sensation as language as it passes through you, or whatever it is, while you are physically running. I don't think I have ever tried to kind of document that process of so much movement happening at once. And I think if I was going on a run, obviously I don't always think in a poem, but if I was going on a run normally, you would be thinking and you'd be like, oh, bird song, oh, this thing, oh, in between your thinking, your, the perceiving, sort of thought perception is moving in and out of each other. And it would feel, I would have thought that my sense of what's going on for me when I'm running is incredibly disparate and broken up and weird. And even though I am a kind of single thing moving through everything else, I was sort of surprised by, and maybe it is like you're saying, Chris, the fact that actually there's the linear, the fact that you are like plotting all the way through, there is that continuum that holds everything together. And I think that's maybe what I was surprised by, which sounds really stupid because that in itself is the form. So of course it continues, but it was that was the only thing that held everything together. That narrative but non-narrative force, that just like compulsion to both run, like you are just running, and writing, that those were the only things that sort of seemed to hold everything together. But I know I'm not really responding to your question as well, because I think there were sort of two things going on with the sound in those different pieces. Because in the first one, I think I was in the running one, I think I was very I was more focused on things coming and how that then got merged with my inner thoughts, or the sort of how perceptions were turning into words and marking that down. But then in the One Day This Glass Will Break, I suppose it is like, you see the light bulb, you have this sort of sense, you write the words down, but then my sonic relationship with it was more like the words are inside me, like I've already ingested the words, and then like the words are kind of, I don't know, a sort of, again, like just excavating. So it's like a weird, it's more internal, the second one. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible ramble. I don't
Is
know
that
anybody.
actually, that's a good segue, because I was wondering, like the second one, the first one you're dealing with a lot of movement you're reacting to. The second one you're dealing with a photo, like a stillness, yeah. And I was just curious if you like, well, you just explained the difference, I guess, but have you worked with just still photos before or since? And
I haven't worked. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
No, just do you find there's differences in all that?
I haven't worked sonically with images before that, and again, like a Yana narrative, the book that I did, where the text, like one half of the book is normal text and the other half of it is all fragmented and sort of broken up, and it was more that the fragmented, broken up visuals of it suggested a sonic way of dealing with it. So I think yeah, that it's usually that, well, I don't know, it really depends. It's either comes in through mimicry, the sound, or through trying to explode sonically or open up what a discrete word is into its like sonic, what it could be if you slow it down or open it up or speed it up or whatever it is. But I think sometimes it helps if you get a visual cue, just as it helps having a visual notation afterwards. It's that sort of funny relationship, which comes first, I don't know.
Camilla, I just have two things to say. One is to, well, the first time, I think the first workshop that I've been with you was a workshop, I think back in 2015, you were giving on writing with trees and with the nature, which has been incredible. One of the best workshops I ever been, that basically the way of looking at nature, trees, and then preserving it and then reflecting it into writing. It was a whole day workshop, going walking with the trees and communicating with them. And then it was hilarious. I want you to, maybe if you can explore more, tell us more about nature in your writing and trees in specific. And also if you can tell us about the Singing Apple Press and your activities, new series of podcasts that you're doing.
Oh, Gazelle, that's sweet of you to ask. Yeah, so, and I'm so glad you enjoyed that workshop. I love delivering that workshop, I have to say. Like for anybody else who's not familiar, the workshop basically comprises of like sort of two sections. One is thinking about like the kinship between human language and, you know, potentially like tree language, or like what are the modes of kind of interlap or overlay. And so I break down human language into just like sound, movement, and mark making. And the idea is that you make a mark with a tree, you make a mark like a tree, you make a movement with a tree, make a movement like a tree, make a sound with a tree, make a sound like a tree. And so this idea that you're thinking about the ways in which trees use sound, mark, and movement, which is obviously components of the way we make language, but to create something totally different. And I love that. It's so fun. I don't, but anyway, I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. And then the other one was about, the other half of that workshop is about writing something. It was about indoor and outdoor writing, which actually speaks to this activity of running, because I found, you know, I was thinking about environments and writing, and how, you know, an indoor environment that is warm, that is comfortable, that doesn't have other noise, that has somewhere you can put your notebook, or, you know, that you've got your pen and the rain's not gonna rub it out and your fingers aren't gonna get cold, and like just things that we don't necessarily think about, because that's why our writing environments have evolved to support a certain activity, so we don't have to think about everything else. And so I was thinking about, you know, obviously a tree is outside, and unless I have a kind of bonsai that I bring inside, if I want to really write outside with a tree, I'm going to have to write in a very uncomfortable environment for myself. And I'm thinking about the types of writing that is written inside about outside things, and the type of writing that is written outside about outside things. And so the process we did with Gazelle was writing. So you'd sit, you know, you go and work with this tree, maybe write some notes, come inside, write down what you thought about it, and then take the notes back outside and like re-engage with the tree and be like, oh no, this really doesn't work, actually. This is not what my experience of the tree is about. And so you change it, and then you come inside and then be like, oh no, I don't want to say that. Anyway, so it's this sort of shifting thing of, depending on where you are, how a reading of something can feel right, you know, like, and actually it was wonderful. I'm so glad you're here, Zoe, because I used one of Zoe's poems, Between Trees, her Between Trees sequence, as one of my kind of initial things that I was tearing fragments out, that I thought, I was like, oh yeah, this bit goes well with being outside with a tree. Yeah, anyway, so that's about kind of reading in different environments. And I think Singing Apple Press grew out of that experience of trying to think about how, I think particularly trees, because, you know, trees end up as bleached, like paper. But, you know, we forget that, you know, we don't know, I don't know what tree this came from. It has no voice, it has no, you know, like, it's just there for me to write on. And that for me was a key thing in thinking about what our relationship is to the other than human world. Because if we think of it as, you know, just materials that we can tear down and bleach and then express ourselves on, that feels kind of formally problematic. So how can we actually learn different ways of articulating speech or kind of language in a more exploded sense to incorporate the sort of liveness of another other than human kind of body or agency, that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, chopping it down, killing it, stuffing it, recording it, you know, like, what are the different ways in which we can genuinely, like, learn from different species and incorporate their influence into our language without it being a death of these other organisms. So I think that's where the Singing Apple Press came in, because I was sort of thinking, you know, like, how do you publish other than digitally, if you're kind of going fully sort of you know, like clean energy, which is pretty much, you know, none of us can guarantee that our digital energy is totally like eco and renewable sourced and everything like that. Like, how can you publish a book? Like, how can you sort of write in a way that is not killing the thing that you're talking about? So it's not that I came to a like particular, I was thinking, you know, I did write into every like apple on a tree, and so the idea that the thing that changed for me was actually, like, in order to move away from that habit or the sort of unfortunate fallout from our reading and writing practices, we either have to develop a totally different way of working with language, or we have to maybe bring in some of the influences from those other environments into language. And so, you know, if I'm tearing down, if a tree is being pulped into paper for me to write myself on, wouldn't it then be a kind of balance to put my words out in a tree environment and for the weather to break my words down? And, you know, it's not, you know, all of this is a totally imperfect science, and you know, but it's just kind of beginning to reach towards some, I don't know, some.
Orally is the only way to publish orally, and then there's no cost in the usual way. But it would be kind of cool and good if every time you had a piece of paper, it said the birth and death date of the tree and what it was, just in the little corner, you know, font like 0.5 or something, maybe even really small, and it'd just be like, you know, oak, born, you know, 1600, you know, died 2020 or so. You know, it'd be tragic, but at least we'd know the cost.
Yeah, exactly. And so in Singing Apple Press, what I've tried to do is, even though I'm using paper, I would have like the physical parts of the tree or kind of leaves in, you know, like writing into the leaves that are then incorporated into the text or in different ways. So just the idea that the things that you're writing about or kind of creating from and with have their own voice, you know, because I think what bothered me was the feeling that like human language is replacing everything all the time. And obviously that's, you know, I know there's problems with that as well, because obviously it isn't, it continues to exist in a different dimension. But anyway, these are all my imperfect ways of thinking about it.
Yeah. And when you're exploring your vocal techniques or your sound exploration, what what part of reproduction or imitation and what part of invention and improvisation do you put in your in your sound, you know, because sometimes I recognize you, sometimes I didn't recognize the object. And how do you feel that kind of work of reading and translating and improvising at the same time, reproducing a sound or transforming, you know? The same question of concrete music. What was that, you know, that not recognize the source of the object, you know? It becomes like a new kind of object between voice and nature, because I think like in some poetry was a lot of that word is created between machines by digital and voices. That kind of like a phonetic shamanic exploration, like before technology. I think that connection was with nature in a way, you know, like and the microphones, by example, I work a lot with microphones. They allow you to reproduce some sounds, some spectrum of sounds that you don't realize you are in yourself, or you can communicate, you can listen. That's the sound of tree, the sound of electromagnetic stuff, and that kind of reproduction and transformation of sound. How do you feel it in your work?
I think, what do I think? I think I actually, do you know what? I find it strange because there were a couple of sounds that came up when I was improvising just then in the one day this glass will break, and one of them I just trying to see if I can like. I mean, to me, I don't know how that comes across, but to me, it really sounds like a dog toy, you know? When you know that somebody is squeezing. So I was like, oh, weird. I have dog toy in my body. You know, like clearly my lung is doing the same thing that the inside of that like squeaky thing is doing. The answer is I think when I'm improvising, I definitely am not trying to mimic sounds that come from outside, but naturally they arise because I don't know, they're just within us, and maybe it catches my curiosity because it's that thing of like when you're making sound, you're obviously listening at the same time. You're like, oh, that sounds like a dog toy. Keep going. That's interesting. What does that sound like and feel like, and how are you making that? Like, what is your lung doing? So it's like I'm trying to sort of understand what my body is doing to produce that sound at the same time as making it. And then you kind of like let it go and go on to another thing. So I feel like that's not really answering your question at all.
No, because for me it was not a dog toy. It was like another kind of object that you produced, you know, like the sound of a bed, people making love, the sound of like the northern lights, different experience that I had with that, you know. And that is why it's not, maybe you were reproducing some objects, but I receive a transmutation of that experience. And then are you consciousness of that I don't know, message that you pass between the object that you think and the public that it feel you, like you receive your message?
I have no idea. I literally have I wish I had a stronger sense of what anybody else is thinking or feeling when I'm performing, but I literally have no idea what anybody is thinking or feeling as a result. I don't know whether everyone's incredibly bored and wish it would end, or whether people are like, oh, interesting. I wonder with sound, because I know when I see performers moving, and I get, you get the kinesthetic empathy, and your body starts moving in the way that their bodies are moving, and you're like, oh, I like the feeling of that movement in my body when I'm watching it. And I think I get that with sound a little bit as an audience member, but I don't know. Do you, Martin, when you hear sound, do you do you feel it in your body, or do you just think about it as like a sonic object?
But I think the both of things. I think the sounds brings me vibration, and vibrations allow me a lot of kind of different mechanisms in my brain and in my soul and in my flesh. I have some hallucinations, like a kind of, I start to perceive things around me, and I start to smell some things, you know, and I think it put on me the sound in a moment that kind of level of hallucination, and I perceive at that moment new kind of sonic objects or sonic existence of something, but it's really sensual, you know. It's like it's make me passionate, it's make me like excited, and really like with wind blowing and heart beating. Yeah, of course. And and it bring me like a lot of joy in a way. You know, the joy like to have a group of friends every Wednesday, like to share that. That is for me, that's the most important thing. And poetry for me is that. If maybe you are not describing, you're just like transmitting a new kind of existence for unknown people in a way. And that is beautiful in silence, because this silence is invisible. And you create things like really ecological. You have not a space. It's like in the middle of everything, you know. You have and just like in radio station, you know, you're selecting some sounds and some objects, and you connect it with some stars. You know, the first Arabian poets, they start to make poetry. They connect themselves to a star, and they sell the kind of his soul to the star, and they became a changing with the star. And they start talking to them, and they start to ride with stars, and yeah, you have I think I believe I feel that in your poetry, that kind of shamanic prehistoric state, and at the same time a big potentiality to work with like microphone and captors, and just I imagine you running in the next festival that we will organize with Felipe in Chile. You're like making a running around Santiago with some captors and writing with the sound in over the buildings in the street, you know, like yeah. But you know, I think that's just like keeping not technology to like complicate things, just like to perceive a new kind of spectrum of sound. And for me, that in poetry is really important, because in sound don't need translation. You don't need, you know, sound is universal, and it's mathematical at the same time. Then you just sound is, you can talk with in any language, with any people, with animals, with minerals, with machines, with things that happens. And anyway, but yeah, we need like a laboratory to explore. After COVID, we create something with Felipe and people, and in Barcelona. So we're working with Eduard and Gerard and Joaquim, like want to make a collection of LP of some poetry and
poetry vaccine.
Yeah. And anyway, I love much. I don't know. Anyone want to talk? All the people that are in silence. Stephen, Andres, Luna, Adrian.
I have to say, I'm somehow quite interested in that you said you told us about this, of course, the running thing, but also about the moving and about the movement. And in my practice, this is kind of a really big part actually too. So when I write music or when I compose music, the last album only developed out of me going somewhere in the woods with my guitar. And while walking, I would create those patterns and write it and make it a song somehow. And so from this on, I always tried to have like an audio device with me. So when I'm walking, it's somehow this moment of letting go of the thoughts, or like letting the thoughts walk as well somehow. And then I maybe don't have the pressure of sitting at this table and having to write the thing or something like that. But also in the, like having the sound and having it first auditive or oral is also a big part for me. So maybe, I don't know, is that for someone else as well, maybe?
I think the first time I started, when I was working with this tree, like back, 10 years ago, it feels like almost, I started recording exactly for that reason. I was like, I want to just record my thoughts as they come out in this environment. And it felt like the act of writing was getting in between me and, I couldn't keep all my perceptual body open and be writing. Felt like there was a closing down that happened just in that moment. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna speak my words into a dictaphone instead. And what was great for me, and I don't know whether this happens for you or it goes into your compositions, but of course you're not just recording your voice, you're recording everything else that is around. So when it came to actually using those words or kind of recordings and putting them into poems, it was great because I was like, oh great, I've got all this other stuff that's also going on. And it felt, again, another way of like recording multiple voices at the same time rather than it only being my voice.
I had one other thought about the what you were saying about the voice being so manifold and essentially being armored against all the sound, that basically as we're babies, we can make every possible sound, and then getting to know a language, you essentially carve away the possibilities of your voice. But I was thinking of voice kind of training therapies that I'm just learning about now, because actually a student of mine was trained in them by Linklater, and that essentially there are these tactics for essentially getting the autonomic nervous system to release through hyperextension of the limbs. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but the idea is that that essentially we're all armored against a huge part of what our somatic and psychic experience could be, because civilization and governmentality discipline us into thinking only in very and articulating ourselves only in very limited ways. So there are actually techniques for, hyperextending the limbs and getting them to tremor. That's the technique is called tremoring, and to release so that you kind of unleash the full potential of the voice. It's specifically a technique of vocal training. And so as you were talking about that, I couldn't help thinking about this work that a student of mine is doing to like theorize this process that he says was, like it sounded totally insane that he would hyperextend his limbs, basically going into happy baby. I mean, it looks like people are doing happy baby pose in yoga when they're doing this, and then and that it would somehow unleash all this stuff. But he says that he absolutely started like hysterically crying within a few minutes of doing this. And it's Catherine Fitzmaurice, who's best known for this work. I can put her name in the chat, but I'm just learning about it now. And the idea is that the body starts tremoring, and then this involuntary vocalization ensues, and it's something that actors use. It very much comes out of like a post-68 liberatory
theater, people like that, or Meredith Monk and
yeah, exactly. It's kind of that moment, and it's still practiced, as a somatic and a psychic practice for doing this hard work that you were basically sharing with us before, of being able to loosen up and find all these recesses of the voice. I'll put her name into the chat here in case you want to check it out.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds amazing. That sounds so interesting. The work that I've been doing is actually with I think they're not both Berlin based, but is through the world of sound, and is very much movement and sound, and sort of how through moving you activate different parts of your sonic self, and vice versa, that actually what happens when you sound, where does that happen in your body, and how can you use that sound as a sort of physical prompt or score for movement. But I haven't come across that at all, so that sounds really, really interesting. Is it painful? It sounds like it would be painful, the hyperextending, or is that part of it?
I don't think it's painful. I think it's just she calls it a psychophysical approach. I don't think it's painful at all. I just think it's like you're literally on the floor doing Happy Baby with some other people, and it's a really vulnerable, position to be in. So it's just the idea that people would let go in that way and then allow for vocalization. Just the kind of awkwardness of it is the only painful thing about it. And, a related Linklater is a related vocal technique. So these are still practiced, but there's almost a kind of griot thing around it, whereby there aren't manuals for doing it. Like, it's a process of induction. So you can find like one YouTube video about this, but it's like not on purpose. Catherine Fitzmaurice doesn't like do a how-to or like tremoring for dummies kind of guide. I think it's basically like New York, like very community based, but it's international, but like it's very much about like being in the present space and time with other people doing it. And it seems like the non-transcription of the technique is part of the whole idea of it, which is so in itself, I find that kind of fascinating, because it goes counter to the contemporary penchant for archiving absolutely everything and digitizing everything and transcribing everything and making everything available as information,
Which I think is really difficult with somatic experience, because it's, there can be a digital rendering or kind of echo of it, but that's not what it feels like in your body. It's not related to what you were saying, but it is, but it's not exactly. But one of the things that we did, one of the techniques we did in with the world of sound, it sounds a bit weird, all of these things potentially weird, but we were doing screaming, but like really, really, really screaming. And it was so interesting hearing how a different person, like that actually people would find it quite difficult to allow them, like, I don't mean like psychologically allow themselves to scream, but actually physically, like we had to they had to like the person we were working with had to sort of put their arms like underneath and really open the chest up, and kind of the other person push against it in order to be able to like release this scream, because it just was like it was stuck in their throat. And so that, you know, what, just speaking to what you're talking about like civilizing and how certain sounds are just so you know, smothered or kind of trapped in ourselves that physiologically we don't even realize that we would have difficulty sounding them. So that was one thing, but then the other was like how everybody's scream was really different. You know, like one person would have like a really angry scream, and one person's scream was really frightened scream, and you know, like it was so interesting. I don't think I'd ever really, you know, it was like a lot, you know, the idea that you could have a library of screams, and it's not just about the sound, it's about the particular emotional kind of imprint that is in each one. Yeah, anyway, I was just fascinated. I was very
that's totally fascinating.
Beautiful. Mary Monk used to make some workshops like that in the 2000, and Joan La Barbara also in New York. I used to and Eduardo Escofeta invited her to Madrid, and it was a really wonderful moment. She prepares the body and the inner sensation, the proprioception, and connected that with like nature around it, and then create a new kind of sound with voice.
And by the way, Meredith Monk, I'm like on her mailing list, and she's doing some online workshops that people can take. And, you know, normally you would have to be in New York or whatever, and they're not expensive, and they're by donation. And she and her company were doing it every Sunday, I think it was. But in any case, you can check that out and find. She's doing like a 3-day workshop in mid-December herself.
Yeah. And she worked a lot with dancers, dance and poetry. And I remember she made a workshop in Paris, and was full like 2 years before, and I had just postulated 1 month before that, and she was really grateful that one poet go in the middle of the dancers, and everyone was it was a dancer workshop, and just a sound poet in the middle, and we connect absolutely great moments of transformation your visage, your body in flesh and in soul, and a sound that you perceive, and it's making before with dance and then with sound. And yeah, it's really, Meredith Monk is a really wonderful like kind of transmission of his spirit in that way. And also John Lavar, I don't know. I would love to assist to a workshop of you, Camilla. Next.
Oh.
Yeah. Next after COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I felt really weird actually saying like COVID, and obviously I've got lots of COVID in in the running one. It just was strange. I actually wanted to ask Jennifer, was it your bird piece that Ghazal was talking about just at the beginning? And I didn't know, were you working with like, were you mimicking birds or working with recorded bird sound, or how were you?
Yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm working on a project around canaries, like Hassal. But specifically, I'm really interested in coal mine canaries and canaries used in mining, because I'm doing a big project about mining, copper mining, but all other kinds of mining as well. And I started researching canary song, and there are actually YouTube videos that are used to train canaries that are in cages. And there are instruments that were devised during the 18th century in France to train canaries that were in cages to sing. And so I've been using like interweaving human voice, different human languages, and canary sounds. I don't think I would have the athleticism. Like, it would be amazing to hear you take that on I'm still too like armored vocally to try to do that. But yeah, I've essentially been using things that have been written about canaries, and then the sound of the canary and what we know about the canary's voice box, which is really quite amazing. It's like it can produce two sounds at the same time.
Can you come and give a performance here of your canary sounds, recorded or your own, or
Sure. Yeah, but that would be awesome. Part of my work on the mines is really around also Chilean mines and Peruvian mines, because the whole thing came out of the fact that I learned that the toxic waste dump across the street from my house, which contained milling waste, that the copper for that mill was actually mined in the Andes, and that the company was working between Chile and Peru. So it's very meaningful to present the work to people living in that part of the world.
The series that Ghazal was mentioning was a radio series that I've been making on becoming, and we had one episode was on becoming bird, and I'm really sad that I didn't know about your work, because it would have sounded amazing.
Oh, wow. The reason I'm late is that there was a vulture feeding frenzy outside of where I am staying right now, which is not where I'm from. I'm in Florida, and there was a vulture feeding frenzy that made me realize that there were 2 dolphins in the river. So yeah, I'm surrounded by birds this month, and
Where are you?
I'm learning so much. I'm on the Gulf Coast of Florida, so it's just now getting dark. So the west coast of Florida, and I'm in this place of just such extreme natural beauty, hemmed in by Trump supporters that are holding out with their Trump flags, and it's all ridiculously enraging. So yeah, but I'm surrounded by these amazing birds and bird calls. So luckily I brought my Zoom recorder, so I'm doing some stuff with the sounds of these different birds. They don't sound as they look, like the osprey sounds like a sweet, cheepy bird. And the heron sounds like, this, wah, wah. I can't even do it. Maybe I'll work on that for when I present to the group. I'll get better.
We've got an improvisation coming up. You can make all the sounds you like. It's going to start soon.
Okay, all right. I'll test the osprey and the anhinga and the blue heron.
I don't know, anyone want to talk, or we start the improvisation now?
Camilla, I was just looking, could you please share on the chat the websites for podcasts? I tried to find, I couldn't.
Oh yeah, sure. Hang on.
Someone's got to do some happy screams, some glad screams.
Oh wow, yeah. In the sonic improvisation.
My neighbors be happy.
Hang on, let me find it for you.
That Luna and Adrian can do some fucking great screams if they're still here.
I just received this gift for a couple of weeks ago. These are 2 whistles for different, I don't know which one is which. These are made for bird watchers.
Oh.
So This is for a cuckoo. And you can notice it's just like the upper part of a recorder, which was used to teach the birds to sing in England in like 17th century. And this other one, I don't know which is.
Wow.
Really? Was the recorder used to teach birds how to sing?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so weird. This weird walk back and forth between humans teaching birds, teaching humans. Teaching birds. So weird.
That's fucked up.
Wow.
I mean, we limit our own language. Now we're limiting a bird's language.
Yeah.
Look, I sent you this is a beautiful book. It's called The Bird Fancier's Delight from London, 1715.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's basically contemporaneous with what I was mentioning before. The French instrument, which is called the serenette. And it's kind of a crank, sort of flute, pneumatic flute instrument.
That's exactly what Sally Ann McIntyre uses. She uses I think it's called a bird crank or whatever. She uses that device.
Oh.
But she uses it to play. Oh God, I can't even remember what it is now. Oh, anyway, have a look at her website. It's really interesting.
Okay.
She kind of subverts the technologies that we use to teach birds in order to record bird song or play it back. It's
Thank you.
Really great.
Okay, I'm looking it up. Can you play? Well, Felipe, will you please during the improvisation play those whistles?
Of course. Well, we can start right now. I haven't tried. Let's see this.
Can't hear that one, Philippe. Can't hear it.
Yes, it's Zoom. Zoom doesn't like bird sounds.
One thing that I like at the performance, at the performance that Ghazal was at, I asked everyone to go into the audio settings and the preferences of Zoom. So if you go to Zoom settings under zoom.us or whatever, no, I think maybe I'm the only one in the US, then you go to audio and then there's a setting for suppress background noise.
Yeah, it's in the advanced section. I think you have to press the advanced one, do you? Yeah.
Yes, maybe. And it says suppress background noise and I put that on low.
You can disable it as well, I think. Mine's on disable at the moment.
Oh, let's see if I can disable it. I used to be able to disable it, but now it says low, medium, or high for me. So that's really much better for what I suspect. I conclude from this conversation that everyone here would benefit from suppressing the suppression of background noise so as to be able to hear more kinds of sound.
Wazoo.
Wazoo, wazoo, wazoo.
Mechanical musical instrument. Small barrel organ. It appeared for the start of the 18th century. And it's used to teach tunes to canaries.
No, 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 no.
Serin, meaning canary. And it's housed in a wooden case, normally of walnut, practically measuring 265 by 200 by 150 millimeters. Played
I thought, put it that. I did. I thought, I taught, I thought, I taught, I taught, I put
Puffiness, puffiness.
me hat.
Regulus, regulus.
And you can use your nose one for that.
I taught. I told thee. Put e tat.
UTO, UTO.
I did. I did. I did. E a put e tat.
Answer, answer.
I saw at least 100 vultures swinging above the dolphin laden river.
Baroni. Gross.
Vulture, Mother Nature's sanitation engineer.
Harlequin duck.
Did you know that vultures prevent the spread of the following diseases?
Little bustard.
Rabies, anthrax, bubonic plague, botulism, tuberculosis, brucellosis,
Corvids. COVIDs.
the vulture nature's sanitation engineer.
Down. J. Gazal Masada Kiar Peringer. Martin Vaccaro.
Vaccaro. Vaccarois. Nelsonus. Trimleonis.
Sanitation engineering circling at the beginning of the language is a virus session.
One face near top edge. Zero faces.
Mutus.
Two faces. One near center. Less than a meter away. Zero faces. One face near left. Less than a meter away. Zero faces. Near top left. Less than zero faces.
Max Shearwater 4, Garnet 3. Nickel 1, Lytton 2. Great Heron 4, Marshall. Red Kite 4,
Bird weather.
Sparrowhawk 4. Hobby 1, Water Rail 3. Forehand 2, Coot 4. Corncrake 1, Oyster Catcher 2. Little Ringed Clover 4, Green Clover 1. Lapwing 5, Dotterel Bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. Dog 3, Dandelion 4, Little Stint 3, Lin 5, Rough Jack Knight Nil, Blacktail Godric 2, 4, Red Hand 3, Pistol 2, Pistol 5.
Nil, 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 nil.
Labrador 3, Kitchen 4, Wednesday turn 2, Sandwich turn 4, Guillemot 5, Puffin 3. Cocktail 2, Cocktail 2, Cocoa 3, Wood
Sandwich 5, Strawberry 4. Capitalism -1, Utopia 10.
4. Rock Titted 3, Wax Nil.
I
2,
thought
Stone Cat 4.
I thought they put me
Blurred. It's all blurred.
blah 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 blah.
I blurted out what seemed to me the most obvious question.
I thought
over the Blue Lives Matter flags, the Blue Lives Matter flags. I didn't know what a Blue Lives Matter flag was before coming to Citrus County, Florida, where they told me what the American flag with the blue stripes and blue stars meant. It means blue lives matter. It means cops live
Unflag.
here.
Unflag. Let's unflag.
Cops living under the vultures who know better. The Florida cops. Not taking down their expired flags. The expired flags flying over the dying Homosassa River in Seminole territory, Seminole land. The Blue Lives Matter flags flying over the dying Homosassa River. The vultures know better. They were swinging over the river.
Deathers over dead.
Rien que du vide prend la forme que l'on veut bien lui donner. Ni extérieur. Le message de l'au-delà est une forme pouvoir de la répétition. Le pouvoir de la répétition. Le pouvoir de la répétition. Le pouvoir de la
Joyeux green. Joyeux scream. Joyeux scream.
Vultures eating their carrion. Eat the carrot of the Trump supporters, flying their Blue Lives Matter flags over the dying Homosassa River.
Trumpy Trumpicus.
And they can
Distance. Better, 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 better. Worse, 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 or worse, worse, or worse, worse, or worse, worse, or worse, worse. Columbi, Columbi. Montenegrous, Montenegrous, Fisheries, Fisheries.
Where is the blue? In the blue lives matter formula. the sky? Is it in the river? Is it in the mouths of the vultures circling over the expired flags?
D'un mot proche de la vibration que j'aime. Dire comme ça.
Cellini e uccellacci. Uccellini e uccellacci. Mi dicono che il blu dipinto di blu non è quel blu della polizia, no?
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Oh.
Good night, beautiful friends, for all space-time. Everyone stay here, the same space-time for you. Next Wednesday.
Wow, what a great one.
Bonne nuit.
Bye, everyone. Great seeing you and hearing you again.
See you.
Yeah, great to see everyone, man. Where's
See you all next week.
Hello, Camilla. That's a new person, I guess. And Andreas, where are you?
Fine.
Thanks for coming. Come again.
Bye-bye.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.